She may be one of the most successful women in Hollywood, but behind the fame, the awards, and the $250 million fortune lies a story the world never truly saw. A childhood shaped by loneliness, a marriage broken by betrayal, and a journey of healing that almost cost her everything. This is not just the story of a superstar. It's the story of a woman who survived pain the spotlight could never hide, and rebuilt her life piece by piece through motherhood, forgiveness, and the quiet strength she was never given. Before you judge her success, you need to know the battles she fought to earn her peace. The world sees the success, but not the wounds that built it. Today, she stands as a woman who has everything people dream of. She is known across the world, respected in her industry, financially secure, and living a life that looks stable and peaceful from the outside. People see her name and think of achievements, awards, and strength. They see the confidence she shows in public, the calm way she handles interviews, the kindness she is known for, and the long career she built through hard work. To many, she looks like someone who figured life out, someone who reached a level where pain can no longer touch her, someone who finally has the comfort she once only wished for. But if you look closely, behind all this success is a woman who carries a quiet heaviness that fame cannot erase. She lives in beautiful homes, drives the cars she likes, and can provide everything her children need. Her net worth is in the hundreds of millions, and she is able to choose projects instead of chasing them. The outside world sees power in this. They see a woman who won in life, a woman who stayed strong in a tough business, a woman whose name alone is enough to pull attention. But this version of her is only one part of the truth. The other part is slower, quieter, and hidden behind the walls she built to protect herself. Even with all this stability, she carries memories that do not fade easily. She has lived through moments that shaped how she thinks and how she feels. Fame did not make those memories disappear. It simply taught her how to hide them better. People assume that once you reach her level of success, hurt becomes smaller. But for her, the pain from the past never truly left. It just found a quieter place to live inside her. She knows how to smile for cameras, how to speak in a way that appears balanced, and how to carry herself with strength. But when she is alone, she often sits with thoughts that the world knows nothing about. Her life today looks full and stable, but her heart remembers everything she has survived. She remembers the years when she struggled, the moments when she questioned her worth, the times she felt abandoned or unseen, and the fear that followed her into adulthood. Those feelings did not disappear just because she became famous. They shaped her understanding of trust, love, and safety. They influenced how she raises her children, how she chooses relationships, and how she protects herself from being hurt again. People think strength is something she learned from success, but her real strength was built long before she became known. It was built through childhood experiences that taught her how to stay quiet, how to keep going even when she felt alone, and how to carry responsibility that should never have been hers. That strength is the foundation under her public life, even if most people will never see it. With time, she has learned how to manage the gap between how people view her and who she truly is inside. She allows the world to see the confident part, the successful part, the calm part, but she keeps the deeper parts protected. This is not because she wants to hide. It is because she learned early in life that not everyone deserves access to her inner world. The pain she lived through taught her to be careful with her heart. Today, even with everything she has achieved, she still carries a softness inside her that comes from surviving more than people realize. Her strength did not come from fame. It came from endurance. And her success did not erase the struggle. It simply gave her a safer place to stand. But to understand what shaped this strength, we have to go back to a childhood no spotlight ever touched. Before the cameras, before the world knew their name, there was only a child trying to belong. She was born into a family that looked interesting from the outside, but felt complicated on the inside. Her mother was a talented opera singer from Germany, a woman with a strong presence, a powerful voice, and a life built around performances. Her father worked as a voice coach, strict in his habits and firm in his expectations. Both parents came from artistic worlds that demanded discipline and constant movement. Because of this, the house she grew up in never felt like a steady place. Life changed depending on her mother's performances, her father's teaching, commitments, and whatever city or country they happened to be living in at the time. From the beginning, she did not grow up with the idea of a fixed home. She spent early years moving from America to Germany, Austria, and other places connected to her mother's work. One year she would be in an English-speaking classroom, trying to catch up with new classmates, and the next year she would be sitting in a European school, struggling with another language and another set of unfamiliar faces. Some children grow up surrounded by extended family, cousins, neighborhood friends, and routines that build comfort. But for her, life felt like an endless cycle of packing suitcases, new beginnings, and sudden goodbyes. Every time she began to settle somewhere, it was time to leave again. Inside the home, the emotional atmosphere was unpredictable. Her mother was passionate about music and perfection. She expected discipline not only from herself, but also from anyone near her, including her daughter. When her mother practiced, the sound of opera filled the entire building, echoing through the walls, powerful enough to shake emotions without touching the heart. Her father was quieter, but strict, living by rules he believed were necessary for success. Their love for their daughter was real, but it rarely showed in simple, warm ways. They were busy, stressed, and deeply focused on their own careers. And like many children raised by ambitious parents, she learned early that her needs came second. The first signs of emotional hunger appeared long before she understood what those feelings meant. As a small child, she often sat backstage during her mother's performances, surrounded by heavy curtains, dim lights, and the smell of makeup and old flooring. Everyone around her was busy preparing for the show costume changes, warm-ups, and makeup retouches, but no one stopped to ask how she felt, or if she was lonely. She watched her mother shine under the spotlight, receiving applause, love, and admiration from strangers, while she stayed in the background, quiet and unnoticed. She began to understand that love, in her world, seemed to be connected to performance. If you impressed, you were seen. If you were quiet, you disappeared. Her childhood memories were a mix of cold winters in Europe and lonely evenings in temporary apartments where nothing ever felt stable. She remembers sitting on the edge of a bed in a small room while snow tapped against the window. The heater barely worked, and the room smelled like old wood. Her mother was performing that night. Her father was organizing the next trip. She sat there, too small to understand why she felt so invisible, but old enough to feel the ache of being forgotten in the middle of adult priorities. School didn't offer comfort either. Because she moved so often, she always felt like the outsider. Her accent sounded strange wherever she went. In America, children noticed the German influence in her speech. In Europe, they noticed her American expressions. She never fully belonged to either side. Teachers were kind but distant, classmates curious but not welcoming. She learned to keep her head down, to stay quiet, and to adapt quickly. But inside, she feared that nothing she did would make her truly fit anywhere. There is one memory she carried with her for the rest of her life, a moment that symbolized the emotional distance inside her own family. She was still young, maybe around 10 years old, sitting in a dressing room. The lights around the mirror were too bright, and she could hear the distant rumble of the audience taking their seats. Her stomach tightened with a familiar feeling of being left alone again. From behind the door, she heard her parents speaking. Their voices were low but sharp. She heard her mother's frustrated tone, followed by words that stung deeply, even though she didn't fully understand them. She slows me down. She holds me back. She froze in place, staring at her small reflection in the mirror. Her father did not defend her. He simply stayed silent. That silence taught her something painful, that even the people who were supposed to protect her didn't always choose her. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just sat there, realizing for the first time that love in her home came with conditions, expectations, and pressure she could never fully meet. From that point forward, she tried even harder to behave perfectly, to avoid causing trouble, to earn attention by being helpful or talented. She learned to become the easy child, the one who didn't complain or ask for much. But deep inside, she began to believe that love was not a natural right. It was something she had to work for. Her early childhood left her with silent wounds. No one around her noticed. Wounds shaped by constant movement, emotional distance, and the belief that she was always one step away from losing the little affection she received. All she wanted was a safe place, someone who stayed, and a feeling of being enough without performing. One moment in adolescence would shatter everything she believed about love. At an age when most kids search for identity, she was learning to survive. Her teenage years were not the time of excitement and discovery that many people remember from their youth. Instead, they were filled with confusion, pressure, and the constant feeling of being out of place. Because her family moved so often, she entered her teen years without a real sense of home. Every school she attended felt temporary. Every group of friends felt like strangers she would soon have to leave behind. She wanted stability, something steady to hold on to, but instead, she lived in a kind of emotional transit, always arriving, never belonging. Cultural displacement made things harder. In the United States, she sounded slightly European. In Europe, she sounded too American. Her clothes were different, her habits were different, even the way she carried herself felt strange to the kids around her. Teenagers notice everything, especially differences, and she became an easy target. Sometimes the bullying was direct comments about her accent, jokes about her being the foreign kid, whispers behind her back. Other times it was quiet and subtle, not being invited to sit with anyone, not being chosen for group work, being ignored in conversations. These small rejections added up, creating a deeper loneliness than she had ever felt in childhood. She tried to blend in, adjusting her voice, her clothes, and her behavior depending on where she lived. But no matter what she changed, she still felt like two different versions of herself competing inside one body. One version wanted to fit in and be accepted. The other wanted to stay connected to the parts of her identity that came from her traveling childhood, her mixed cultural experiences, her unique background. The conflict left her feeling split, unsure of who she was supposed to be, and afraid that none of her versions were good enough. The isolation pushed her further inward. At school, she walked hallways with her books pressed against her chest, avoiding eye contact. At home, she spent hours alone in her room because her parents were busy or exhausted. She wished someone would ask her how her day went, but those questions rarely came. She learned to keep her emotions private, to smile politely, even when she felt empty inside. The world around her kept moving, but she often felt like she was standing still, stuck between cultures, languages, and expectations. The turning point came during her mid-teen years, a moment that would stay with her long after she became an adult. One evening, she returned home from school feeling drained from another day of being the outsider. Her parents were talking in the next room, unaware she had come in. Their voices were tense, the kind of tone she recognized from past arguments. She stood quietly near the doorway, not because she wanted to eavesdrop, but because something in their voices made her freeze. She heard her mother first, frustrated and tired, saying things about how she felt overwhelmed, how touring and parenting were too much at the same time. Then came the words that cut through her like a blade. "She makes everything harder. She holds me back." Hearing it once as a child had been painful. Hearing it again as a teenager broke something open inside her. Her father didn't argue, didn't defend her, didn't even soften the statement. His silence confirmed something she had feared, but never wanted to believe, that she was seen as a burden, not a blessing. That her presence, complicating their lives, was not just a moment of frustration, but a belief that lived quietly inside their home. Something changed in her that night. She walked to her room slowly, trying not to make a sound. She sat on her bed and let the pain settle inside her. For the first time, she felt a place, deep emotional rupture, a breaking point where childhood illusions faded. The people she wanted comfort from were the same people who made her feel unwanted. It was the moment she stopped hoping for their approval and started looking for a way to build her own life. But from that pain came something powerful. The wound planted the early seeds of ambition. She didn't know yet what she would become, but she knew she had to leave one day. She wanted a life where she didn't have to earn love, where she didn't need to change to be accepted, where she could finally breathe. The idea of escape became a quiet promise she made to herself. She didn't know how or when, but she knew she wouldn't stay in environments where she felt invisible or unwanted. With childhood innocence swept away, she made a decision that would rewrite her destiny. Dreams are expensive, and she paid in hunger, exhaustion, and broken nights. When she finally turned old enough to leave home, she carried only a small suitcase, a few saved dollars, and a heart full of determination. She knew she had to move if she wanted a chance to build a life that wasn't shaped by other people's expectations. New York City became her destination, not because it was comfortable, but because it was a place where she could disappear and start again. The city was loud, crowded, and overwhelming, but it offered something she had never truly experienced: independence. Her first months in New York were nothing like she had imagined. She shared a tiny apartment with 2 other young women who were also chasing their dreams. The rent was cheaper, split 3 ways, but even then, it felt impossible to manage. The apartment was cold in the winter, hot in the summer, and so small that her bedroom barely fit a single mattress. The kitchen stove worked only half the time, and the bathrooms had constant plumbing issues. But these were problems she learned to accept quickly, because survival required focusing on what mattered most: finding work wherever she could get it. She took any job that came her way. Waitressing was one of the few options available without experience, but even that came with its own set of challenges. Her bosses weren't always kind. Some customers treated her like she was invisible, while others crossed personal boundaries in ways that made her uncomfortable. She learned how to smile politely, even when she felt disrespected, how to stay calm when someone yelled at her for reasons she didn't understand, and how to work long shifts without proper breaks because she needed every dollar she could earn. There were days when she skipped meals to save money, nights when she came home so exhausted that she fell asleep without changing clothes, times when she stood in line at grocery stores counting coins, hoping she had enough for basic food items. The city pushed her to her limits, but she refused to give up. Her dream of becoming an actress kept her moving. She believed that if she worked hard enough, if she kept trying, eventually something would break through. Auditions became a regular part of her life. She traveled across the city with her worn-out shoes and a small folder containing her resume and photo. Most auditions lasted only a few minutes. She would stand in front of a panel of strangers, deliver a few lines, and hear the same polite responses every struggling actor hears. "Thank you. We'll let you know." Those words became familiar, almost predictable. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, with very little progress. She faced rejection after rejection, and each one carried a small sting that reminded her of the doubts she tried so hard to ignore. Sometimes she wasn't told why she didn't get a role. Other times, the feedback felt deeply personal. Too tall, not tall enough, not the right look, not glamorous, too soft-spoken. These comments pushed her back into old feelings from her childhood, the idea that she was never quite enough. But unlike before, she didn't let it break her. Instead, she used the pain to work harder. She practiced her lines at night. She studied other actors. She took classes she could barely afford just to improve her chances. Despite the struggle, there were small victories that kept her going. Her first tiny role came in a low-budget thriller that barely anyone remembers today. She appeared for only a few minutes, but the paycheck covered 2 months of rent. She celebrated by buying herself a small meal from a local restaurant, sitting alone at a window table and letting herself feel proud for the first time in a long while. That moment reminded her that progress didn't always come in big steps. Sometimes it arrived quietly, giving her just enough hope to keep moving. But even with these small wins, emotional isolation stayed with her. She had acquaintances, but very few close friends. Everyone around her was chasing their own goals, facing their own battles. People came and went, drifting in and out of her life as quickly as the seasons changed. It was easy to feel forgotten in such a fast-paced city. She kept her struggles private, rarely admitting how scared she sometimes felt. She didn't want anyone to worry about her, and she certainly didn't want anyone to think she wasn't strong enough. Yet deep inside, the determination that had pushed her out of her childhood home kept her going. She reminded herself often that she had already survived things far worse than rejection. She had endured emotional distance, instability, and loneliness long before she arrived in New York. This new phase of her life, as difficult as it was, belonged to her. Every failure, every rejection, every exhausting shift at work, they were all steps toward a future she still believed she could reach. She didn't know when her break would come. She didn't know which audition would finally open a door, or which moment would change everything. But she kept showing up, day after day, believing that her life could not remain this hard forever. She trusted that all her sacrifices, sleepless nights, and quiet battles would eventually matter. And she was right. Because while she struggled through long days and painful rejections, something bigger was quietly forming in the background. Something she could not see yet, something that would change her entire life. But fate was preparing a moment that would throw her into the spotlight, ready or not. Some successes arrive like explosions, loud, unexpected, and impossible to control. After years of rejection, long shifts, and barely surviving in New York City, she finally reached the moment she had been chasing. It didn't come gently. It came suddenly, like everything she had worked for was released all at once. The breakthrough happened when she landed a role that people in the industry actually noticed. It wasn't just another small part that disappeared on the background. This time, she was the face the audience remembered when they walked out of the theater. Her breakout role came from a project she almost didn't audition for. She was tired that day, physically and emotionally drained, and close to skipping it altogether. But something pushed her to go anyway. When she entered the room, she didn't feel confident or glamorous. She felt like the same struggling actress who had heard no more than any other word. But for the first time, something clicked. Her energy fit the character. Her timing was natural. Her presence caught the attention of the casting team. And instead of another polite rejection, she got a call back. Then another. And finally, the offer. The film became a hit faster than she could understand. Critics praised her performance, calling her fresh, charming, and someone who brought something different to the screen. The media wanted interviews. Directors wanted to meet her. Suddenly, she went from someone fighting to be seen to someone people couldn't stop talking about. Her face showed up on posters, magazine covers, and entertainment shows. In just a few months, she moved from waiting tables to sitting across from famous actors during interviews. The transformation felt unreal, like she was watching someone else's story instead of living her own. The industry reacted strongly to her rise. Producers who once ignored her now pretended they always believed in her talent. Casting directors who had turned her away without a second thought were now offering her auditions before she even asked. Her name started circulating through rooms she had never been allowed into before. People called her the next big thing, and the momentum of her career grew too quickly for her to fully process. Every day brought something new: a meeting, a role offer, a public appearance, a red carpet moment. She didn't have time to stop and breathe, let alone understand how her life had changed so dramatically. But sudden success is not gentle. It is fast, heavy, and difficult to manage. Fame became a whirlwind that pulled her in every direction. One moment she was filming for long hours, and the next she was expected to smile on talk shows and handle press interviews with charm and confidence. She moved from one project to another without much rest. The excitement was real, but so was the exhaustion. She didn't want to disappoint anyone, so she said yes to almost everything. And as her schedule grew more demanding, so did the expectations placed on her. With fame came attention she never asked for. People began watching her every move, analyzing her appearance, judging her choices, and comparing her to other actresses. Comments online and in magazines became impossible to avoid. She was praised one day and criticized the next. It was the kind of scrutiny that could easily break someone who wasn't prepared for it, and she wasn't. Deep inside, the old insecurities she had, carried since childhood, came rushing back. The fear of not being enough, the worry that she didn't truly belong, the belief that love or approval came only through performance. She smiled for cameras, but she didn't always feel the joy that people assumed she had. She signed autographs while wondering if she really deserved this attention. She looked confident on red carpets, but inside, she sometimes felt small, the same girl who used to sit quietly backstage waiting for her parents. Fame didn't erase her past. It simply placed it in a brighter light. The more the world praised her, the more she questioned herself. Was she actually talented, or just lucky? Was she admired for who she was, or just for the image the industry shaped? Public adoration felt warm, but temporary. In interviews, she laughed easily, joking with hosts and showing the personality that fans fell in love with. But when the lights turned off and the cameras stopped, she often returned to hotel rooms or homes that felt too quiet and too empty. The gap between her public life and private reality grew larger with each passing year. People saw her as confident and unbreakable, but inside she struggled with loneliness, self-doubt, and the pressure to maintain a perfect image. Her rise continued. Even bigger films came her way. Her name became a box office guarantee. She worked with respected actors, directors, and studios. It was exactly the life she had dreamed of in New York. But achieving a dream doesn't always feel the way you imagine. Sometimes it brings new challenges that the old version of yourself isn't prepared to face. She didn't stop moving. She didn't slow down. She rode the wave of success because she didn't want to lose the opportunity she had earned. The fame grew, the roles expanded, and her influence in the industry became undeniable. But while her career climbed higher and higher, something else was happening beneath the surface. She didn't realize that the side. The faster she rose, the more she was being pulled toward a turning point she never expected. The public saw a woman at her peak, celebrated and adored. But behind the scenes, her life was about to be shaken in ways she could never imagine. But even at the top, she didn't see the storm forming behind the scenes. The higher she climbed, the less anyone noticed how much she carried. Once her breakout role opened the door, her career didn't just grow. It accelerated at a speed even she couldn't fully understand. She became one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood, moving from one major project to the next with barely any breaks in between. Big studios wanted her. Well-known directors asked for her specifically. Audiences filled theaters just to watch her performances. She became a rare talent who could succeed in both comedy and drama, something that gave her a unique place in the industry. Her films began breaking records. One year, she starred in a romantic comedy that became an unexpected hit worldwide. A year later, she led a dramatic movie that earned her some of the best reviews of her career. She was nominated for awards again and again, and each time she stepped on a stage to accept a trophy, she heard standing ovations from people who once doubted her. From the outside, it looked like the perfect story, someone who worked hard, never gave up, and finally reached the top. Then came the performance that changed everything. When she starred in a movie that touched the hearts of millions, her role earned her some of the highest honors in the film world. The award season became a series of emotional wins for her. She received global recognition, standing on stages holding the biggest award an actor can receive. The world saw her as a symbol of success, a woman who had achieved what most actors only dream about. Photos of her smiling with the trophy spread everywhere. Reporters asked her how it felt. Fans celebrated her victory as if it were their own. But inside, the pressure grew heavier. Success came with expectations she struggled to meet. People thought that because she was talented, she had to be perfect. Every new role had to outperform the last one. Every public appearance was judged. Every interview was analyzed. She began to feel that one mistake could bring everything crashing down. The industry loved her, but it also demanded more from her than she could comfortably give. She feared disappointing people, feared slipping even slightly, feared losing the career she fought so hard to build. Her perfectionism became both her shield and her prison. She pushed herself harder with every project. She rehearsed longer, stayed later on set, read scripts with an intensity that left her drained. She wanted to honor the opportunities she had been given, but the cost of maintaining that standard was high. She rarely allowed herself to rest because rest felt dangerous, like slowing down might cause everything to fall apart. She kept smiling for cameras, signing autographs, giving interviews, and appearing confident, even when she felt overwhelmed inside. With each achievement, the gap between how the world saw her and how she truly felt became wider. People assumed that her success must mean she was happy, secure, and emotionally fulfilled. But the truth was different. She often felt lonely in crowded rooms and empty after big celebrations. When she won major awards, she returned home to quiet nights where the excitement faded quickly. The applause ended the moment she left the stage, and she was left thinking about how the same old insecurities still lived inside her, untouched by fame. She struggled with emotional dissonance. On one hand, she was grateful for her career, proud of how far she had come, and aware of how fortunate she was. On the other hand, she felt a deep emptiness that success didn't fix. She started realizing that achievements could bring recognition, but not connection. Money could provide comfort, but not peace. Fame could make her known, but not understood. She had everything people dream of, yet part of her still felt unseen. Even during her highest moments, she carried the quiet weight of her past. The memories of her childhood, the emotional wounds she never fully healed, and the feeling of not being enough stayed with her. She learned how to hide those feelings behind humor, charm, and professionalism, but they remained there silently, influencing her choices and shaping her reactions to stress. She wanted joy to match her accomplishments, but something always felt missing. Still, she kept going because she didn't know how to stop. The world praised her for her strength, her talent, and her ability to rise again and again. But no one saw what it cost her. They saw a successful actress living a dream, not the woman who went home hoping that one day her heart would feel as full as her career. And just when the world celebrated her triumph, the deepest betrayal arrived. Sometimes the person you trust most becomes the weapon that breaks you. After years of building her career and carrying her private struggles alone, she finally met someone who made her believe that love could be safe. He was different from the people she usually met in the industry. He wasn't polished or glamorous. He wasn't trying to impress her with charm or fame. He was down to earth, confident in a quiet way, and seemed to live outside the artificial world she had grown used to. For the first time in a long while, she let her guard down. She allowed herself to believe that maybe she didn't have to be strong all the time. Maybe she could lean on someone else for once. In the beginning, their relationship gave her a feeling she had missed her entire life, a sense of home. He made her laugh, listened to her stories, and made her feel appreciated in the simple, everyday ways that truly mattered. He admired her success without being intimidated by it. He appeared genuine and grounded, which drew her in even more. After spending so much time surrounded by people who wanted something from her, he felt like someone who wanted her, not the fame, not the spotlight, not the career. This made her trust him deeply and quickly. As time passed, their bond grew stronger. She felt comfortable enough to imagine a life with him, a future where she didn't have to carry her burdens alone. Eventually, they married, choosing to build a shared life that looked full of warmth, hope, and mutual support. He became part of her world in ways she hadn't allowed anyone else to be. She stood beside him proudly, believing she had finally found the kind of love that didn't require her to perform or pretend. She believed this was the moment her emotional wounds would finally heal. The early years of the marriage felt meaningful. She balanced her career with her desire to build a stable home. She tried her best to maintain a normal life, even with cameras following her and fans wanting pictures. She believed she was building something real, something steady, something she never had in childhood. She trusted him, defended him, and invested herself fully in their future together. She didn't see the cracks forming behind the scenes. She didn't notice the shift in his behavior. She had no idea that the person she loved most was living a separate life, as she knew nothing about. Then, everything collapsed in a way she never imagined possible. While she was enjoying the biggest career moment of her life, winning major awards, receiving global recognition, being praised everywhere, rumors began spreading. At first, it was one story, then another, then more. What started as whispers quickly turned into headlines. Information about his infidelity surfaced. Not one incident, but several. Photos, messages, and stories from multiple women came out. Every detail felt like a new wound. The press exploded with coverage. The betrayal became public news, and, suddenly, her marriage was not just breaking. It was breaking in front of the entire world. The humiliation was overwhelming. She had always tried to keep her personal life private, but now the most painful part of her life was being discussed by strangers, reporters, gossip shows, and online commenters. She couldn't escape it. Every television screen, magazine cover, and social media platform carried pieces of her heartbreak. People speculated, judged, laughed, and created stories that weren't even true. She felt trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Privately, the pain cut even deeper. She didn't just lose a partner, she lost the belief that he had ever been honest with her. Everything she had built with him suddenly felt like a lie. She questioned every memory, every conversation, every moment they shared. She couldn't understand how someone who claimed to love her could betray her in such a cruel and careless way. The emotional collapse was heavy. She struggled with feelings of shame, anger, sadness, and confusion. The person she trusted most had turned into the source of her deepest hurt. She found herself asking the same question again and again. Was anything real? It was more than a question. It was a painful truth she had to confront. The trust she gave so freely ended up being the very thing that shattered her peace. She had been open, vulnerable, hopeful, and in return, she was left broken in front of millions of people. Her childhood fear of not being enough came flooding back. The feeling of invisibility returned. She wondered if she had ignored signs, if she had trusted too quickly, or if she simply wasn't worthy of the kind of love she had hoped for. But even while she was hurting, she stayed silent in public. She refused to attack him or defend herself. She refused to turn her pain into a spectacle. Instead, she took time to sit with the truth and make decisions for her own well-being. Filing for divorce was not just a legal step, it was an emotional one. It was her way of reclaiming her dignity, her peace, and her sense of self. She chose to walk away, not out of weakness, but out of strength. The world watched her fall and rise at the same time. While she was facing humiliation, she also showed a kind of grace that earned her even more respect from people everywhere. They saw not just a successful actress, but a woman who chose integrity over anger, maturity over revenge, and self-respect over trying to fix something that was already broken. But privately, she cried through nights, questioned her worth, and fought to hold herself together. And yet, even as she stood in the middle of heartbreak and public judgment, life was quietly preparing something unexpected, something pure, soft, and completely different from the pain she had just experienced. A new chapter was forming, one that would gently begin to fill the space that betrayal had left behind. Yet amidst the wreckage, a new kind of love was quietly waiting to enter her life. Where romance failed her, motherhood rebuilt her. In the middle of heartbreak, when her marriage had fallen apart and the world was watching her pain, something gentle and life-changing entered her life at the exact moment she needed it most. Before the scandal broke, she had already begun the private process of adopting a baby boy. She kept it quiet, protecting the child from the chaos of her public life. And when she finally held him in her arms, everything inside her shifted. The noise of the outside world faded. The betrayal that once felt unbearable suddenly fell into the background. She was no longer living for a relationship that had broken her. She was living for a child who already loved her without asking for anything in return. Becoming a mother gave her a kind of peace she had never known. For the first time, love didn't feel conditional. It didn't feel like something she had to earn. Her son didn't need her to be perfect or famous. He needed her to be present, steady, and loving. She had spent her entire life carrying emotional wounds from a childhood where she felt unseen, unheard, and sometimes unwanted. But holding her son, she promised herself that his story would be different. He would never wonder if he was enough. He would never sit in silence hoping someone would notice him. She would give him everything she never had: security, affection, patience, and unconditional love. Motherhood changed the direction of her life completely. She slowed down her career, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She turned down major projects so she could spend more time at home. She rearranged her priorities so that every decision began with the question, will this hurt or help my children? Her home became a place of warmth instead of loneliness, filled with toys, small footsteps, and bedtime stories. She started waking up earlier, not for work, but for morning routines with her son. Breakfast together became more meaningful than any red carpet event. Watching him grow felt more rewarding than any award she had ever won. As she settled into motherhood, she adopted her second child, a little girl who brought even more light into her home. With 2 children depending on her, she found a strength she didn't know she had. Parenting wasn't easy. It came with long nights, constant worries, and the pressure of wanting to give her children a stable life. But the challenges didn't scare her. They healed her. Every time she comforted her son during a nightmare or braided her daughter's hair before school, she silently healed parts of her own childhood. She was becoming the mother she wished she had growing up. Her emotional transformation was deep and personal. Instead of chasing acceptance from others, she now focused on building a loving environment for her children. She stopped seeking validation from relationships and started valuing her own inner peace. She learned how to communicate with softness, how to apologize when needed, how to listen instead of dismiss, and how to comfort without judgment. These were skills she hadn't been taught as a child, but she taught them to herself for the sake of her kids. She made new promises she held close to her heart. She promised that her children would never have to audition for love. She promised that their feelings would always matter. She promised to show them that home is not a place of pressure, but a place of safety. She promised to break the patterns she grew up with, to give them stability instead of chaos, and comfort instead of emotional distance. She understood more clearly than ever that generational wounds can be passed down easily, but they can also be stopped by someone who decides to do better. And she decided to be that person. Motherhood didn't erase her pain, but it gave her purpose. It didn't fix her past, but it gave her a future worth protecting. She didn't need applause, attention, or validation anymore. She had two little souls who saw her as the center of their world, and that was enough. Her children gave her a reason to forgive, to heal, and to keep moving forward, even when the world felt heavy. But life wasn't done testing her heart, not yet. Goodbyes have a way of reopening wounds we thought had healed. Just as she was settling into motherhood and slowly rebuilding her life, another emotional storm appeared, one she couldn't escape, one she couldn't walk away from. Her mother became seriously ill, the kind of illness that arrives without warning and changes everything overnight. When she first heard the news, she felt a familiar pull in her chest, a mix of fear and sadness she hadn't experienced since childhood. Even though their relationship had always been complicated, she still loved her mother deeply, and the thought of losing her brought back all the old emotions she had spent years trying to understand. She flew to be by her mother's side, entering a hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and carried the coldness she remembered from childhood winters. Machines beeped softly. Nurses moved quietly. Her mother, once strong and commanding, now looked fragile in the hospital bed. The woman whose voice had once filled opera halls could barely speak above a whisper. Sitting beside her, she felt time slow down. All the unresolved feelings between them, resentment, love, confusion, admiration, rose to the surface. She didn't know how to begin a conversation that carried years of silence, but the moment demanded honesty. In those final weeks, they spoke more openly than they ever had before. Her mother apologized for the ways she had fallen short, for the emotional distance, for the pressure, for the moments when ambition took priority over family. She confessed that she never meant to make her daughter feel unwanted, that she simply didn't know how to balance her career and her role as a mother. Hearing this didn't erase the pain, but it softened decades of hurt. It gave her a small but meaningful sense of understanding. One afternoon, while holding her mother's hand, she asked the question that had lived inside her since childhood. "Was I ever enough for you?" It came out quietly, without anger, just a desperate need to know the truth. Her mother looked at her with tired, teary eyes and said the words she had needed to hear her whole life. "You were always enough. It was me who didn't know how to be the mother you deserved." Those words cut deeply, but they brought a strange sense of peace. The emotional distance she had carried for so many years suddenly felt lighter. Her mother passed away shortly after, leaving her with memories that were painful but also strangely comforting. She had received an apology she never expected. She had experienced a moment of closeness she always wished for. But grief doesn't follow straight lines. Losing her mother reopened the wound of not having the kind of childhood she longed for. Even with reconciliation, the loss left her feeling empty. She grieved not only the woman who died, but also the version of their relationship she never had a chance to experience. Not long after, she faced another heartbreak, her father's passing. Their relationship had also been complicated. He was strict, quiet, and focused on discipline. He showed love in controlled, distant ways. She respected him, but they never had the deep emotional connection she secretly wanted. Losing him brought a different kind of pain. With both parents gone, she felt a strange sense of being unanchored. Becoming an orphan as an adult is a unique kind of loneliness. You suddenly realize there is no one above you anymore, no one whose guidance or approval you unconsciously seek. It forces you to see yourself differently. Their deaths pushed her into a long period of reflection. She questioned the emotional patterns she carried into adulthood. She thought about the times she tried too hard to please others, The times she stayed silent to avoid conflict, the moments she chose people who didn't value her. She realized how much of her life had been shaped by old wounds. The search for closure became an emotional journey she had to take alone. Although she found some comfort in the final conversations with her mother, not every question had an answer. Forgiveness was a process she worked through slowly. It came in waves, some days strong, some days weak. She learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the emotional grip the past holds on you. She reminded herself that her parents were human beings, with their own flaws, their own traumas, their own limitations. Understanding that helped her soften her heart without denying the truth. Losing both parents shifted her psychological landscape. She felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because some emotional pressure was gone, heavier because grief took its place. She became more aware of how deeply childhood experiences shaped her choices. She understood that healing wasn't a straight path, but a long, sometimes painful process. Slowly, she used her pain to become more present, more intentional, and more emotionally available for her children. She wanted to give them a different story, one filled with connection and understanding. She thought grief would be the final test of that chapter of her life. But she was wrong. And then came a global crisis that forced her to face the one thing she'd been running from herself. Silence can be the loudest teacher. When the pandemic hit, the world slowed down in a way she had never experienced. For the first time in years, there were no film sets, no interviews, no red carpets, and no travel plans. She stayed home with her children, trying to create a sense of normal life, while the world outside felt uncertain and frightening. At first, she believed the break might be good for her, a chance to rest, to be present, and to enjoy the quiet. But the silence brought something else. It forced her to sit with thoughts she had avoided for decades. Without the constant distractions of work, she started feeling waves of anxiety that came out of nowhere. Small worries grew into heavy panic. Her heart would race suddenly, her chest would tighten, and she sometimes felt like she couldn't breathe. The panic attacks scared her because she didn't understand why they were happening. She had always kept busy to avoid her emotional pain, but now there was nowhere to run. The stillness of lockdown brought up memories, fears, and unresolved emotions she had buried deep inside. During late nights, while her children slept, she found herself thinking about her childhood, her marriage, her losses, and the parts of her life she never properly dealt with. The loneliness felt sharper, and the silence made her realize just how much emotional weight she had been carrying all these years. She understood that she had spent most of her life in survival mode, always pushing herself, always keeping busy, always pretending to be fine even when she wasn't. Eventually, she reached a point where she knew she needed help. She decided to go to therapy, something she had avoided before because she feared opening old wounds. Therapy wasn't easy. It required her to look closely at the patterns she repeated. Why she chose certain relationships, why she feared abandonment, why she struggled with self-worth, and why she carried so much responsibility on her shoulders. Each session felt like peeling back a layer she had covered for years. Slowly, she began to understand herself better. She learned that her perfectionism wasn't a sign of strength. It was a protective shield she built as a child to avoid criticism. She learned that her habit of taking care of everyone else was her way of trying to earn love. She learned that her fear of losing people came from early memories of emotional distance, where she felt unseen and unheard. The more she understood the roots of her pain, the more she realized she had spent her whole life trying to fix wounds she didn't cause. Healing didn't happen quickly. Some days she felt strong and clear-minded. Other days she felt overwhelmed and unsure. But she kept showing up because she knew she wanted to create a healthier version of herself for her children and for her own peace. Slowly, she built a new relationship with herself. She learned how to rest without guilt, how to say no without fear, how to express emotions without shame, and how to trust again. The pandemic exposed her hidden struggles, but it also gave her a path toward healing she never knew she needed. She began rebuilding her identity this time, not as a performer or public figure, but as a human being who deserved love, care, and understanding. But healing didn't just change her mind, it changed her entire life path. For the first time, success is measured not in applause but in peace. After everything she lived through, she made a powerful decision. She stepped back from the spotlight, not because she lost passion, but because she finally understood that constant work was no longer the center of her life. She wanted to be fully present for her children, to watch them grow, to guide them through their own lives without the constant pressure of cameras or schedules. This choice surprised Hollywood, but for her, it felt natural. Peace mattered more than fame. Her days now are simpler, quieter, and more meaningful. She wakes up in the morning to the sound of her children rather than alarms and deadlines. Breakfast together became a small ritual she cherishes. School drop-offs, helping with homework, and being present for their emotional needs became her priorities. She enjoys the moments most people take for granted, walking her dogs, sitting in the garden, cooking meals, and hearing her. Children laugh in the next room. These ordinary moments give her a sense of joy that no award ever gave her. She also learned how to build healthy boundaries. She keeps a small circle of friends who don't care about fame, people who have known her before success and stayed through the difficult times. These friendships bring her comfort and balance. She no longer allows relationships that drain her or people who take advantage of her kindness. Instead, she surrounds herself with those who appreciate her for who she is, not for what she can offer. New love entered her life slowly and privately. She didn't rush. She took her time, learning to trust again. She chose someone who respects her boundaries, values her children, and supports the peace she worked hard to create. This new relationship is steadier, calm, and free of the chaos she once experienced. She learned that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. Her life now also includes acts of service and quiet generosity. She donates to causes she believes in, supports emergency relief efforts, and gives privately without seeking attention. She believes deeply that money can make life comfortable, but kindness makes life meaningful. She chooses to live with purpose, using her success to make a difference in ways that feel honest and grounded. Most importantly, she found inner stability. She no longer feels the need to prove herself. She no longer chases approval or validation. She doesn't measure her worth by roles, awards, or public praise. Instead, she measures it by how she treats people, how she raises her children, and the peace she feels when she sits alone with her thoughts. Her journey taught her that healing is not about forgetting the past. It's about building a future that feels safe, loving, and true. And now, as she moves through life with more confidence and calm, she understands that success is not the life the world sees, but the life she feels inside her home and inside her heart. The journey isn't over because the legacy she leaves is just beginning. The greatest stories aren't about fame, they're about becoming whole. When people look at her journey now, they don't just see a successful actress or a famous public figure. They see a woman who lived through pain, love, loss, betrayal, and healing, and still chose to rise with kindness. They see someone who survived not because life was easy, but because she refused to let the hardest moments define her. Her story inspires others because it shows that strength doesn't come from pretending everything is perfect. It comes from admitting the truth, facing the wounds, and choosing to keep living with an open heart. Her life teaches that resilience is not loud. It isn't always about fighting or pushing through. Sometimes it looks like stepping away, creating boundaries, choosing peace, and allowing yourself to heal without apology. She shows people that it's okay to outgrow old versions of yourself. It's okay to change your path when the old one hurts too much. It's okay to slow down and put your emotional well-being before the expectations of others. Many people who followed her career saw the glamorous parts, but the real lessons came from everything she lived off-camera. The quiet nights, the tears, the rebuilding, the conversations with herself, and the courage to start over again. Her story also teaches something important about love. She believed for years that she had to earn it, perform for it, or prove herself to deserve it. But motherhood and healing taught her that real love is steady, patient, and unconditional. It doesn't punish you for being human, and it doesn't disappear when you make mistakes. She teaches others not to chase approval from people who can't give them the love they need. Instead, she encourages them to value themselves enough to walk away from places where they feel unseen. Her life shows that love doesn't have to hurt, and that healing begins the moment you choose yourself. She also teaches a powerful lesson about forgiveness, not the kind that excuses pain or denies wrongdoing, but the kind that frees your heart. She learned to forgive her parents for their limitations, not because they didn't hurt her, but because holding on to the pain kept her stuck. She learned to forgive herself for staying in situations that broke her. Her journey reminds people that forgiveness is not a gift to others, it's a gift you give yourself to move forward. Emotionally, her story reaches people because it feels real. She never pretends to be perfect. She admits her fears, her mistakes, and her regrets. She shares her healing process openly, which helps others feel less alone in their own struggles. People connect with her because they see themselves in her experiences, the loneliness, the confusion, the desire to be loved, the pain of losing people, and the hope for a better future. Her life shows that even the strongest people have moments of weakness, and that having those moments doesn't make you broken, it makes you human. Her journey also encourages viewers to look inward. Every part of her story reminds them that healing doesn't come from achievements or outside approval. It comes from understanding your own heart, facing the parts of yourself you hide, and learning to accept who you are without judgment. She inspires people to ask themselves hard questions. What wounds am I carrying? What patterns am I repeating? What do I need to let go of? How can I build a life that feels peaceful instead of painful? The lessons she leaves behind are not about fame. They're about courage, softness, boundaries, love, and emotional truth. She shows people that it's never too late to change, never too late to heal, and never too late to rewrite your story. She proves that life can still be beautiful even after heartbreak, and that strength can grow from the most painful places. Her legacy isn't just in movies or awards. It's in the people who watched her survive and realized they could survive too. It's in the lives she touched with kindness, the hope she gave through her example, and the quiet message she sent to anyone who felt unseen. You are enough. And now the question remains, what will you do with the pain life handed you?